I'm actually very scared right now because I hear ice cream truck music. Jeremy, do you hear it too?
Yeah.
I'm not crazy, okay? I was like, did I just lose my mind sitting at the table? Oh. I feel like this is basically an omen that we should get ice cream. I've never had it. I live on a dead-end street in a suburb. Why is there an ice cream truck? Maybe it's like the movie It, but with ice cream. Hello and welcome to Learn to Wargame, the audio podcast. This is Brandon, or Muteless on the forum.
This is Karl on Facebook.
This is Jeremy, we go by Lord Fool.
This is Scott, and my nickname is Seabass.
Today we have a special guest on.
Hello, I'm Will Pagani, or PPS_Pagani.
Welcome to our humble podcast.
I'm very happy to be here.
Have you ever listened before?
Oh, not in a very long time.
You listened back in the day? Oh, God.
Way back.
Nice.
Yeah, when you guys first started up, I listened.
Those were some bad episodes. No wonder he stopped. Anyway.
We all start somewhere, all right?
I remember listening to your, was it Road to War? Was it?
Yep.
I listened to your guys' car trip episode, and it was amazing. Well, you guys were like at Arby's or Jack in the Box or wherever you were, like going through a drive-thru while podcasting.
That was an adventure, let me tell you.
The whole time someone's in the passenger seat just holding Will's army on a tray while they're on the highway. Like,
that was Tom.
No way this can go badly.
We hit some train tracks, and it went horribly wrong for my convergence army.
Oh, it's mostly plastic.
Yeah, luckily.
Yeah, except for those angels.
There's basically all these fiddly metal pieces surrounding a nuclear reactor. So if anything happens to them, they just explode. All right. So we have a few things to talk about with Will. I'm basically going to let Scott lead with the asking questions. And we're going to basically just have a group conversation about stuff and things.
I see what you did. Blame Scott for
I'm
everything.
going to make Scott do it because I don't want to. I'm lazy.
Scott, watch out for that bus.
Yeah, I know, right? Thankfully, after podcasting with Brandon for a while, I've learned that the axles are exactly like 3 inches away from my nose when it runs over me. So I should be okay. So, Will, the first thing I want to say is again, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. We appreciate it. We know it's a dedication of your time to the community, and we wanted to say thank you for that.
I love doing this kind of stuff, so I'm very happy to be here.
So on that note, like you're obviously like you've had a lot of success in the community as you know as a player, and then moving on to privateer press. I guess like to kind of set the stage for the communication of the conversation to have. Do you feel that the perspective that you bring to the table as like a former world-class competitive player like your WTC, do you feel like that's changed like the way that you approach model development at all?
I would think so, yes. I mean, let me just give you a little bit of a background of what goes on exactly with our model development here. We'll all kind of sit around a big meeting table and we'll be like, this is our concept. What do we want it to do? And then we all just kind of like throw ideas out there. So being able to quickly identify like, oh man, that is not going to work very well, as in like this is way too overpowered or this doesn't do anything, that kind of stuff has I think streamlined a lot of the process here, where as a different perspective from what some of the other people here have. So I do think that my tournament experience stuff has applied very well here.
So basically you're kind of speeding up development by playtesting it before it actually gets to the playtester. So like you see that problems earlier as opposed to later.
I like to think so, yes. I don't know if everyone else here would agree that helps speed things up or not. But
We won't blame you for Una.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, you know, like to kind of further that point, like I remember there was a statement made when the Scorn design was happening, where there was a comment made by one of the PP staff where you apparently had taken like 28 razor board, or not razor boars, but the
Reptile
helms. Yeah, you had apparently taken 28 of those and then tested a game with it with Xerxes 2 to make sure that it was okay. And I remember like a lot of the sentiment around that was the community was, you know, they were partially laughing like really hard because like who would think of that? But then you kind of stop and think about that from that competitive player's perspective. Like, no, a competitive player will think of that, right? And so that kind of spawns the question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think when that happened, Reptile Hounds were I want to say they were like 3 points apiece.
They were 2 for 7, I believe.
You were testing them at 3 points apiece?
Yeah, and that was like 2/3 of the list. That wasn't even the whole list.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy when we identify things like that, and then we try it on the table, and we're like, oh, this is no, we can't do this. So I know we caught a little bit of flack for the 4 points each on those, but let me tell you, 3 would have been a travesty.
Well, I think those low point costs get so razor thin. 1 point turns. I mean, so what's the difference between 3 and 4 points and up to like 105? It's
a pretty big number, yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot more razor force.
Yeah.
Reptile Hounds. I did it too. Damn it.
Scott has derailed this podcast to an irreparable state.
Minions in all things.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing you can do to counteract like the small sliver points that matter a lot, like, and we saw it even more in Mark II. So increasing the points definitely helped, but it still exists. Like the difference between 1 point when you're trying to take as many as possible can matter a lot.
And I think it's a lot of it's based in percentages, right? Like a 3 point to a 4 point increase is a 30% increase in cost,
right?
Or a 30% decrease in cost, depending on which way you want to look at it. So that is a very substantial change, especially when you're talking about something that's FAU.
So with that information, as a gamer and a game developer, what are some of and to kind of set the stage for the listeners, what are some of the greatest highlights you've had that you feel you've had in the community, and why do you feel or do you feel those are helping you now as a developer? So just taking aside like all the tournament success and the things you've done at Asgard and everything like that, like just looking back at like the things that you've had the most fun doing or the things that you've really enjoyed or you felt were really impactful to the community, how do you feel those are helping you now with Privateer Press?
I do feel that knowing all of the people that I do know in the community has been an incredible help here at Privateer Press, because when Tom or something is like, hey, this list seems pretty busted, I can be like, hey, Tom, tell me about it. Like, why do you think it's busted? What do you think is too good about this? And he can kind of give me his logic behind it, and then we can kind of work through it with him and see if it actually is busted. And then there's also the other side, right? Like, hey, we're looking at bringing up the War Wagon. What do you like about the War Wagon right now? What don't you like about the War Wagon right now? So I think those just personal connections to so many different people all over the world has been a great help in not only like idea building, because a lot of what we're doing in C.I.D. is like, hey, what would you guys like to see? Like, what's the direction you would like this to go in? But having those personal connections to kind of talk about the game in a bunch of different places all at the same time I think has been invaluable.
Yeah, you guys have definitely taken a more community-oriented direction in the last 6 months. I mean, it's happened with it kind of coincided with your hiring. I don't know whether it's I don't know if the two are related, but the C.I.D. and like you said, the relationships you bring with world-class players all around the world.
C.I.D. was definitely in motion before I showed up, but I would like to think that one of the reasons that I was hired was to kind of help aid with that and push that forward.
Well, and I think like to a more microcosmic level, you know, when you talk about the community, like one of the things that I have often told people is that this game is made infinitely better by the community of people who play it. You know, like I'm sitting here with friends that I've met, you know, just a year ago, and some of my closest friends, some amazing connections I've made throughout the community. So it's actually really cool to see that mirrored and then advantageously developed as you work through like new stuff in Privateer Press. Because I think a lot of people, when they look at that, kind of have this idea that like everything at Privateer Press is done in a vacuum, and then it's released to the public, and then the public says, oh, yes or no. And I wasn't really sure if that was the case, and then your answer kind of helped form or shape that answer a little bit.
Well, what I will say, kind of to reinforce your point, is the C.I.D. means that basically nothing will ever be formed in a vacuum ever again. And I don't believe that it was before. Like Hungerford, even before I was here, had great community ties. DC, of course, great community ties. Several different painters and all the lore guys and stuff, they all had community ties. But C.I.D. kind of puts that out in front of everything. Sure, we've had our bumps. Like we have our measuring tool stuff going on right now. Some people didn't like the direction on the gun carriages. we're going to have these bumps, and I know that's fine, but people need to realize, I think, that this is not like an us versus them kind of thing. This is a us with them kind of thing, and this is really what we want out of C.I.D. is to see how this works in the real world, essentially, because there's only so much of us here, and there's only so much internal and even external playtests that we can do. We've opened this up to everyone to see how it will actually work, where we're removing the guesswork is our hope.
I've been surprised at how much you guys have. I guess when I first heard of the C.I.D., I kind of assumed it would be a kind of a last minute. Here's this thing, go break it in the real world and see if it's broken. Kind of a stress testing mechanism, but there's really been a lot more fundamental changes to models and rules I've seen to the C.I.D. so far.
Yeah, I mean, we're very stern on some things. There's things that we're not going to back up.
Sure.
We have to stay on concept, but past that, there's anything is possible. If somebody comes up with a great idea and they're like, oh man, this would be really awesome, and we like that idea and it fits into what we want from that model, it's probably going on the model.
Mm-hmm.
So, and whether or not we came up with it or they came up with it or they had an idea that led us to another idea, all of that is I think the beauty of C.I.D. because it lets us hear all these voices out there.
Yeah, it just puts more eyes on the project, right? I mean, even in as recent as the most recent Bane changes, the change to Voidbringer, I thought was a really cool way to handle that mini feat. And just to call out a specific example. So I don't know if that came from outside Privateer Press of the community or inside, but
yeah, that was actually directly a request from a user.
Yeah, I thought so. And I think it's a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
We'll see if it plays out, but yeah, I think that's really cool.
I'm not sure if we were planning on getting to this later, but we did hit on the gun carriages a couple times already, and I was a kind of a fan of the gun carriage before we even saw the C.I.D. for battle engines, and then the Khador one just got more boxes, which is kind of expected. It kind of is already, I thought, fitting the hole it should have been fitting. And then when I saw the change to range 8 and losing trample for line breaker, I think I was a little disappointed because the whole reason I liked it was it was a dynamic threading piece with long ranges. And when we saw the new C.I.D. Or dev talk today about it, I think did it go back up to range 10? I think
it is range 10 in the dev talk. Yes,
and then it got bulldoze as well, which I think fixes pretty much every problem I had with it not having trample anymore. So, and having the new heavy impact rule over momentum, I think it puts it right back to the spot where I wanted it to be, and I was actually really excited about that.
Well, not only to talk about the specific rules, but to expand on that, I thought it was cool in the round 1 of the dev talk, you guys kind of put your design philosophy for what you wanted from the gun carriage, and I think the original gun carriage in Mark III was not fulfilling it. You wanted kind of a melee bruiser tank that charged in and disrupted the enemy in melee. And that's not what the gun carriage was.
As it has been brought up to me, we should not have used the word tank because a lot of people are thinking historical tank.
You're thinking like Commissar tank, drive me closer so I can hit them with my sword tank.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, not even that tank.
I gotcha.
We're thinking like massively multiplayer online tank.
Right.
Not World War II tank. So we probably could have chosen our words better there, and I will say that we are learning a lot about this kind of stuff because we've only been doing this for about 7 weeks. So we could have been clearer there for sure.
No, I'm not trying to say anything about the communication. I was just thinking it was cool to see what you guys envisioned for the model. How it wasn't really, it might have been good, but it wasn't really fulfilling that envisioned space in the game, and it's neat to see the process through of kind of changing it, see how the sausage is made, so to speak.
I think we're going to get a lot more of that as we go deeper into C.I.D. and bring more and more of the older models in.
So when we talk about model development, and then we're going to talk a lot about C.I.D. here coming up, what is your favorite model you've helped develop to date that you can actually talk? I mean, I understand there's things that you can't talk about, but what's your favorite model that you've helped develop to date that you can talk about, and why?
Oh, I mean, it's got to be Nayslayers, right?
Damn it.
Like, Nayslayers are the coolest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
So when I showed up at PPHU, they're like, here's Grimkin. And I'm like, what's a Grimkin? And they're like, oh, you're going to find out. And they were right. But Grimkin was the first thing that I really got to like sink my teeth into and really work on and kind of change for what I wanted to happen with models and stuff. And the Nayslayers being a small-based cavalry unit just immediately was like, what is this? This is ridiculous. And then the fact I think they started off when I showed up here like pound 9 armor-piercing lances. I was like, guys, this faction has fury, all right? Like, kill everything. So they ended up at pound 7. But I loved working on them, and I loved like trying to find ways to take their kind of feel and really put it into the model rules. And I had a lot of fun working on Nayslayers and making sure they were balanced and reasonable models, but that they did something very unique and different in the faction and something very unique and different in the game, because there's nothing else really like Nayslayers out there.
There isn't. So did that uniqueness come from, did a sculptor start with that, or was that someone said, let's make some small base cavalry?
So for the majority of Grimkin, it was a Matt Wilson and Jason Soule's creation of art primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, hey, we could put these into Warmachine and we could draw them in through other Grimkin stuff. So like the Gremlins, and of course they have the story from the Defiers, which is a very old story from the role-playing game, and all that stuff. So they were like, oh man, it would be really cool if we could do this stuff. And they just started going with different art and stuff.
Okay.
Because they already had the basic storyline stuff, they could then work inside of that kind of fairy tale punishment design space, hashtag,
we got it.
to build this faction. And it ended up with some really weird options.
Mm-hmm.
Like piggybacks, I'm pretty sure no one was ever like, oh, these are completely normal. There's no way this isn't strange. And the Nayslayers are certainly on that line as well. But they definitely started as artistic ideas and stories from the old role-playing games, and then we're given model rules from there.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So as we switch gears and we talk about like the big subject of the day is really C.I.D, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so C.I.D really has got the community energized. I know I hear a lot of talk about it in my local players. I know everyone else is too, especially with the opportunity to go back and revisit some of the older models in the line, like we are with Battle Engines right now. What are some of the lessons learned, if that's the right phrase to use, about past models that were developed and then are now getting back into C.I.D?
I think one of the biggest things that as developers Privateer Press has learned is uniqueness is very important in models, but it's not necessarily like Cawdor, for example. Let's talk about them for a second. So they have Juggernauts, right? They're POW 19, MAT 7, so they punch a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have Marauders. They're MAT 7, POW 16, so they punch a lot of stuff. They have Beast 09, they have Ruin, they have all this stuff. And all those things do is they punch stuff, right? But it's the little special rules inside of each of those things that differentiates them. And of course, the point costs are very important here as well. But it's those special rules that are very important. So some of the more bland or generic style units get left behind a lot because they're not interesting and they're not unique. So something that we are currently trying to do is go through and figure out how to make each of the battle engines unique in its faction and how to give it a role to do. That is in line with its design, of course. So like we don't want to take the Vessel of Judgment and make it into a Storm Strider, because that's not what that thing does. We did give it Reload 1 today. And you know what? Something I think it's important to say for a lot of the people that are in C.I.D, maybe that doesn't work out, right? Like that thing can get 2 shots now with Admonisher, and is also a reasonably powerful support piece. Maybe this doesn't work out. Maybe we take away the Reload 1. Like, and it's sort of the same thing for the gun carriage, right? Like we made it range 8. Maybe that doesn't work out. Maybe we make it range 10, right? Like there's going to be a constant flux in C.I.D. And it's always going to be trying new options and trying new things.
A lot of people messaged me when the gun carriage went down to range 8, and they were like, this is not very good anymore. I'm like, well, I don't think it's going to stay 8 unless it's actually like good at 8. Like we're not going to make something like everyone wants to play with bad and just leave it there. Like it's clearly not what they're trying to do. So like play test it, and if you don't think it's very good, just give them your feedback, and then we'll see what it comes to next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important to note, that everything in C.I.D is definitely in flux. Like these things are not finalized. That's the entire purpose of C.I.D. And if you don't like something that happens, let us know. If you like something that happens, let us know. And that's That's, I think, something that a lot of people haven't really wrapped their heads around, because it's not something that we've done in the past. We've just said, hey, here are the rules, deal with it. And now it's, hey, here are the rules. What do you think? Should we change something? I think it'll take a little while for people to get used to that and kind of see it. And I think we've seen several people on the C.I.D. forums. They're like, you know what? This thing still perfectly functioned at range 8.
Right.
Like they were like, this did everything I wanted to do at range 8. They were in the minority. Like, people were obviously very sad that it went down to range 8 from 12. But as kind of a frontline charging model at range 8, it still did everything that it did when it was range 12.
And when I played it, it was it's only had the 24 boxes, I think. So I haven't had a chance to play it on C.I.D. yet, so I didn't get a chance to play it with the much increased box count, which probably makes up for the fact that I was always trying to stay out of people's charge range and stuff. So it probably is fine.
Very few heavy war beasts or warjacks can kill that thing in one round without help. Like, most of them don't even get close.
Right.
And then even with help, a lot of them still don't make it. So
I know what Karl said earlier, and I was kind of in the same boat, where when we heard about C.I.D. the first time and we kind of started getting into it, we were like, okay, well, these are basically going to be stress testing completed models, just catch any mistakes that were made. And really, it's just much more like still in the base level of design. Like, these are still being molded into what they want to be, and that's just not what we expected.
Just test rules, like, and I know people are getting on us for typos and stuff in the rules. These rules have not been through editing. They have not been through any of our process before they would go into a book. So this is just us developers working on these things, and copy paste errors happen and typo errors happen all the time.
Mm-hmm. Raw, uncut Warmachine rules.
Yeah. Like, we have some great editors up here that catch all sorts of crazy stuff that we miss as developers, and this stuff is raw. Yeah. This hasn't gone through the other departments yet.
So I guess the question I have, I don't know if we can talk about this. How close is the stuff that gets put in initially? Like, for example, Grimkin. How close was that to its original draft? Like, someone just like, well, we want this unit to do X, and like a bunch of people in the room basically, we'll give it these rules. That should be okay. We'll see how that goes. Is that like, and then the next day it's on C.I.D.? Like, or is there a lot of stuff that goes in before that?
No. Okay. There's months and months and months of internal playtests before that.
Oh, okay.
Months and months.
Cool. I figured it had to be something, but
at the moment, we're playtesting stuff that doesn't come out for over a year from now. That will not be in C.I.D. for over a year from now.
Oh, wow. We always hear the comments that, like, the game is being developed several years in advance. But now that I think the community's gotten an opportunity to see a little bit of what that process actually looks like from the C.I.D. perspective, it really does help frame that. It helps look at it through a very different lens, to understand that, like, you guys are working on stuff that won't be in C.I.D. for another year, 2 years, whatever the case may be. So,
I mean, I know the developers that were here before me get a lot of crap for the 3 years of development time that went into Mark II.
I hate that statement so much.
Yes, and now that I'm here, I completely get it from the privateer perspective, where it's like, I want to say there's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 models in Warmachine right now.
Yeah.
Which means in 3 years, you had to do one model a day, and that includes working every weekend.
Right.
And then just throw away the rule book, because we didn't have time for that, right?
Right. That means you start playtesting every model start to finish in one day, and then never get a chance to come back and playtest the model you playtested a week later with the other model. Like, you're only playtesting that one at that time, or you're not testing it with the model you're going to make next week. Like, it's impossible. Like, and I try to explain that to people, they're like, well, still. I'm like, no, you just don't know what you're talking about.
It's now that I'm on the inside and I see how much work goes into these things, I will never make fun of developers ever again. This is an incredible amount of work, and these guys are great in here, and they're doing the best they can. And the fact that they missed even 3 or 5 models, I don't even know how many, but that were like way too good or whatever, man, I'm done giving them crap about that. All right.
I'm in the same spot. Like, people like to complain about like Mark III. It's like, well, there's all these unbalanced models. I'm like, there's really not. I mean, if you even the stuff that's already been errated, like, we've looked at 6 major erratas on independent models, and even then, like, it wasn't like the game was unplayable by any means. Like, these things are still within the realm of the game. They're just what a lot of people would consider to be too strong.
There's nothing close to Gatsby 2 in Mark II.
Absolutely not.
I think the game's in a really good spot.
Warmachine right now is probably at the point at which I have liked it the most ever. And that's saying a lot for 6 months into a fluctuating rule environment.
Mm-hmm. hmm That's great to hear from me.
Mhm. No,
Well,
I
not
love
to-
playing Warmachine.
Not to like pile it on, but I second Karl and Brandon's position. Like when Mark III hit, of course, nobody looks at the 756,000 words that were got right. They look at the 6 words that were got wrong.
Certainly.
And so, like, when people argue that, when they're like, well, this or that, or gang and the whole gang kerfuffle, and I'm like, well, like, you have to understand something. Like, no game's perfect. Nobody's perfect. It comes out. And then, like, the difference is that if this were a lot of other game companies out there, you would have waited a year for these problems to get fixed. These problems were fixed in weeks, not months, weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, so there's an engagement level that I think sometimes the community honestly forgets about.
It's true. It's true.
So on that note, so while we are talking about C.I.D. anyway, as I shift gears, we kind of already answered one of the questions I had, but just to kind of to get like a little bit better ideology behind it. When a model's put into C.I.D., the concept is like you have this like assigned role, like this is what I need these guys to do, or this model to do. And you bring it to the community, and the community says, okay, this works or it doesn't work. And then we see this yo-yo effect of like really like, you know, something that might be like really powerful and then maybe toned back a little bit, and then they bring it up a little bit. And we talked about the gun carriage earlier, and it's a perfect example of this. The Trollkin War Wagon's also a really good example of this. So the question is it typical to see like wide variations in the C.I.D. process? Do you guys like plan for that as it kind of goes through?
Yes, kind of. I mean, I don't know if plan for it's the right way, but one of the ways that we work on balance for models is by pushing to extremes. So gun carriage, we felt, generated too much rough terrain for how safe it could be with its new hit point value at 12-inch range. What happens if we put it at 8? Oh, that didn't work out? How about 10? and so it's a lot of playtesting, obviously, but it's a lot of trying things. And I think one of the biggest things that's going on in C.I.D. right now, and you're starting to see the community pick up on it and tell it to other people as well, is, hey, have you played a game with this yet? Do you know how this actually feels on the table? Because how a lot of the rules look on paper can be very different from how it actually plays. I think one of my favorite examples of that is very fresh in people's minds at the moment is Ghost Fleet in Crix.
I was about to say.
When that beat dropped, there was a riot. Like, everyone was like, this is awful. This is unplayable. Nobody wants this. This is terrible. And I'm like, guys, this is actually a pretty good theme. Like, this theme's strong. It's very powerful.
4 months later, Mike Gears posting on Facebook, how do you beat this Ghost Fleet thing? Like,
Yeah.
I remember
Like-
Brandon and I on the way back from a tournament had an hours-long argument about if the Wraith engine was like broken or awful.
oh,
I
man.
thought it was awful.
I thought it was amazing.
Exactly. So I think a lot of people look at stuff and then they try to assess it based on their current frame of reference for the game.
Mm-hmm.
But some things are so far out of that frame of reference that you can't do that. And I think that creates this kind of yo-yo effect where it's like, I'm trying to think what we originally had for the Wraith engine. Well, I mean, for example, the blast damage on the Wraith engine, that Schick spoiled it as having the pure unhollowed rule for undead. That made it through about 2 games.
Then someone brought
Before
90
someone-
Mechanothralls.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, before someone was like, man, Terminus and 70 Mechanothralls is invincible when there's a Wraith engine standing. So that didn't make it, essentially.
Not a typo working as intended.
That was brutal, let me tell you. But I will say, and kind of as an aside at the moment, when we do give spoilers now for things that are not in C.I.D. yet, and they go into C.I.D. and they're different from that, it means we've been playtesting them. And it means something blew up.
Yeah, that's what we want you guys to do. So,
So I just want to touch on this. I had this question. You've basically already answered. I just wanted to throw it out there. So a theory I had was that because of how different the 2 versions of the gun carriage were on C.I.D., was that basically sometimes when you get to a point where like we need to put this on C.I.D. now, do you ever have like multiple versions of it that you're like either like any of these 3 versions might be okay, so you play test like one after another? Or it's pretty much always you're with the singular concept, and then you'll just adjust that.
We do sometimes do different versions of things, yes, and you might see that in C.I.D. where like 1 week it'll be this thing, and then the next week it'll be something drastically different. And that happened a couple times in Grimkin, where specifically with like the Witchwood, where we tried a bunch of different stuff. We had a corpse mechanic for a while. That didn't work out. I don't know if you guys played in the Grimkin C.I.D.
I never got to play against the Witchwood. I only ever got to play against the heavy spam, pretty much.
But the Witchwood at some point was able to buy attacks and boost its attack and damage rolls with corpses, which it could hold up to 3, and it could be given them by the Death Knell. So it's POW 15 base. When you Fury it with Heretic, it's 18. When you play Reckoning, the trump card, it's POW 20 and can buy 5 attacks and is a 6-point model.
That seems playable.
I had a local player that was all about Grimkin. He still is. He's super excited for him. And so, yeah, like the whole like being able to like shift all the corpses around and just like auto power up your skin and moans like turn 1.
Oh, I was so mad when I saw someone do that.
Like it's just a wonderful example. It really is.
Titans can't be 12-19, but Skin and Moans can be 13-19. I was like ah! Yeah. I was actually really happy. Basically, every time we saw changes to the Grimkin C.I.D, they were like exactly what I was complaining about the week before, and they immediately went away. So I was like, this is apparently working, because all the problems I had just kind of faded away over the course of 3 weeks. I was like, this is looking much better.
And that's really where we hope C.I.D can get us, right? Like, we hope that through reading all these posts, reading all these battle reports and stuff, that we can take the complaints of the players and make them go away. And we're not going to make everybody happy, right? Like, we're aware of that. That every time we change any one rule, we might make 5 people happy, but we're going to make 2 or 3 people upset. So we're trying to be careful with that kind of stuff and be very cognizant of what we are changing. So that's certainly a consideration on our end as well. Is we would rather change less than more, but we're going to try and make it so that the majority of people enjoy whatever this model does.
Awesome. I think we're ready for the next question, Scott.
Sure. So, and that's a really interesting segue, because what do you feel has been the single greatest aspect of C.I.D, and has it changed the way models are developed internally even before they go to C.I.D?
The single greatest thing that happened in C.I.D?
Yeah, like the single greatest aspect. Like, what are you loving? What do you feel C.I.D provides the most value to you for at PP?
I mean, at PP, okay, because I was going to go for, like, the meme groups, because it's got a lot of good value. At Privateer Press.
Scoring memes is the best thing that's ever come out of Warmachine. I'm sorry.
It's the best thing that ever come out of Warmachine. Salt, for sure.
Yeah.
There for Warmachine. But the best thing that's happened at Privateer Press is when... I mean, honestly, there are some models where we're like, we don't know if this is okay. And C.I.D has really let us kind of hammer those things out. Like, specifically in Grimkin, we did a dev talk on Old Witch 2 and 3, and we added 2 additional arcane machineries to her, which really cranked her feet up, because she gets to use all the arcane machinery effects on her feet. Mm-hmm. We were like, is this going to be fine? I don't know if this is going to be fine. We played a couple games with it, and we're like, this might not be fine. And then we kind of gave it to the players, and we were able to refine to a point relatively quickly, but through all of their playtests, to a point that was fine.
Yeah.
So I think it allows us to take some of our more worrisome rules or complicated interactions and put them in front of a bunch of eyes and see how it works out.
When in doubt if something's broken or not and too spammable, just give it to the community. They'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, right? And we have the same issue with, like, Frightmares. Like, the Canadians were running, like, 14 Frightmares or something at one point. Mm-hmm. And we're like, well, that's probably not fine. So how do we stop that?
Yeah, or Dreadrot spam. That was something that was tested a lot from my local here. He's like, what? It's only 50 Dreadrots. Surely that's okay, right?
Like, oh, yeah, I mean, Scar 2, Scar 1 again.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we worked through that one, through an FA as well as a couple nerfs to their base stats. But I think we've been in a great place on all that stuff.
Yeah, I can tell you from my player's perspective, he's really excited. Based on the last C.I.D, he's really excited for Grimkin to hit. So,
oh, man, very little has changed in our internal. We're really happy with him right now. Like, I think it's really only been wording updates. I don't think anything has really changed stat-wise. I mean, don't quote me on that. Like, I'm sure something will change eventually.
100% quoting you on that.
Very, very. Quote me.
Absolutely.
Quote me.
QTF, post it on all the Facebook groups. Let's get a riot started.
So,
On it.
Thanks.
Great. Source, PPS Pagani says absolutely nothing will change in Grimkin before release. Because being misquoted is the best thing ever.
Oh man,
Yeah,
it's been
absolutely.
a lot recently, and let me tell you, it's really frustrating.
Yep.
Hey, I got a quote from John that says "R."
Yeah, I know, right? Man, I was recently misquoted on a podcast, and it was not fun.
It's especially when you know it's intentional, and it makes me sad.
Mhm.
That
Well, I think just as a separate supposition to that, the thing I think that is the most sad about that is that when something like that happens, like it legitimately hurts the community as a whole. It doesn't just negatively interact like that one person. And so like this game is made amazing by its community. And so every time I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Every time I go to a tournament or I go up to KC to play my friends or whatever, it's like a family reunion almost. Like it's really that kind of a bond. So
I mean, I'm going back to Houston in a couple weeks here, and we've already got plans with all my Warmachine buddies back there. Like we're going to get together. It's going to be amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. So I couldn't agree more that this is a very community-oriented game, and here at Privateer Press, we are, I mean, company line, whatever. Like we're all about it up here. Everyone here wants the community to continue to thrive and to flourish and be a part of it.
I was told, and this is one of the misquote things. I don't know if you actually said this, but someone told me you did. Supposedly, I'm going to want to own Man of War Bombardiers at some point. Is that what you said?
I don't think I can comment on that.
Okay. I'm not asking you what you were referring to. I'm just asking, was it a statement you made?
I don't remember.
Ooh.
oh, Brandon.
If everything in C.I.D. works out, I'm sure Bombardiers will have a home.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm ordering like 3 units of Bombardiers right now.
Pagani, Bombardiers OP. Bye.
To go back to C.I.D. and to kind of shift the focus a little bit to Steamroller. I know the recent round of Steamroller, specifically with Steamroller 2017, has been met with some concern around the proxy and table marker rules. There's a lot of different perspective. There's a lot of different views on this. Do you mind sharing your perspective or your views on this?
Not at all. Not at all. I do think that some people have taken it a bit far in terms of the table markers and things like that being used. But in general, remember that we're trying to streamline here. We're trying to make it easier for players, not harder for players. And I think there have been some arguments made against it, like we're taking pre-measuring out of the game, for example, that are just simply not true. Like we're not doing really anything with pre-measuring. This week's wording was kind of one of those yo-yo effects, right? We were talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
This week's wording is very, very, very strict.
Yes.
And we're getting a lot of great feedback about that, about how this makes players feel, about how this interacts with the community, about how this lets people do stuff. We also have the dev talk going at the moment about the possibility of a second table marker being able to be used. I guess you can quote me on this one. It's looking like that's going to go through. We're going to be able to do 2 markers, which I think is going to be a great compromise for a lot of people. I know a lot of useful things have been posted in that thread about what can I not do with 1 that I can do with 2, that kind of discussion. Personally, I'm not a huge table marker guy. I'm not one of the people that plans out entire unit activations or anything like that. I've been playing for so long that I guess I just don't really feel the need to do that.
Yeah.
Like I've got the muscle memory down to place all the units and stuff and all that kind of thing, which is not something we want to like force everyone to do, right? Like I've played, I don't know, thousands of games of Warmachine in my life. But at the same time, there has to be a line drawn in the sand somewhere, right? And when you talk to Souls about his intention for when he wrote the pre-measuring rule, his goal was, like, if we could go back and rewrite it now, what it would say is a player may measure from point A to point B anytime they want. And I'm sure we could spice it up a little bit and make it a little more sexy in terms of explanation and stuff. But the intention was never for people to leave proxy bases everywhere. It was never to have all these giant widgets made and stuff for people to perfectly plan every portion of their turn before they do anything, or every portion of an activation even before they do anything. It was meant to be there as kind of a quality of life increase, and it got taken and kind of, I don't think abused is the right word because it has kind of a negative connotation, but mutated or used to an extreme that maybe we could have addressed earlier, maybe we should have addressed earlier. but didn't. But essentially, the time is now, and I personally feel that a lot of people that are upset about this will learn that it's really not nearly as big of a deal as it's being made out to be, especially with our second base and our updated wording.
I heard that 2017 in the C.I.D. at least got its final week removed. Is that right? Is this the last week we're going to be doing 2017 C.I.D. in the kid?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
This is the last week for C.I.D. and for feedback.
Okay. So if we want to submit our feedback, it's, the podcasters or the listeners won't be able to do anything, right? It's today, right? Is that right? The 5th?
It will end next Wednesday from here, so
okay.
What is that?
That would be like the 12th?
The 10th, I think.
The 10th.
Oh,
yeah.
10th, okay.
The 10th of May, yes.
Yeah. This podcast won't be out in time, but
Yeah, you all know that. Jeremy could really try to... Okay, it's not going to be
no,
out.
that's not going to happen.
But yeah, I mean, you can always still submit feedback, and you can do that by emailing me, honestly. Like, if it's too late and you feel you have a great idea that could affect this, feel free to email me at pagani@privateerpress.com.
Right.
Wow, that's an amazing invitation. Thank you for putting yourself out there like that.
No problem. No problem.
I have a good spam filter.
I don't
Right.
think anyone could send him anything worse than Mike Brewer's already sent him. I know Mike.
That is probably true.
Mike just daily signs him up for email scams.
What I will say, it's funny story. When I first opened Asgard Games, one of the other local game shops signed up Asgard Games for a bunch of like bridal shower magazines and stuff. So we got like 30 or 40 magazines a week for like 2 years. It was terrible.
It made your wedding planning easier, though, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Everything there. You're like, honey, I've got file cabinets full of ideas. We're gonna make this happen.
I can't imagine someone doing that. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of game stores in Kansas City, but they're not like competitive with each other. I mean, there's been some stigma between them occasionally, but nothing like they're going to like go prank each other or stuff like that. So that kind of blows me away that happens.
No, and honestly, it's actually friendly around here. It's like, oh, you need advice on how to start this. Sure. Because your customers will be mine as well.
That's excellent. Like, I wish you was like that.
Wish Houston was that way. Meanwhile, skimming through a magazine.
Well, we also can't serve alcohol.
It amazes me why Brandon even shows up under that rule.
I have a question for Will that's slightly off topic. Well, it's on topic, but off of our main topic. Would you suggest game stores getting a liquor license, or are you like of the opinion that it only works in very special situations?
Personally, I think game stores need alternate continuous revenue streams besides games. So whether that be comics, whether that be beer and wine, whether that be food, solely selling games in your game store can work for a lot of people. But you'll hit lulls, and those lulls will hurt as someone who did it for 8 years. So if you can have something that's tangentially related that can help smooth out the bumps, the peaks and the valleys, I think that is a smart business decision.
Cool.
Do you mind if we kind of run with that for a minute?
Sure, go with it.
What do you think, as a former game store owner, what do you think the future of game stores and gaming venues looks like? Because there's been a lot of tension in the communities about buying local and not in supporting local stores versus buying online, even though you can get better prices online a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that game stores will continue to exist the way... I mean, nothing's going to continue to exist the way we see them now, but do you think it's going to go towards more of a game club and a bar type thing, or a bar that sells games, or how do you see it going?
Personally, I see the future of game stores kind of in event halls, essentially, where they will have a retail spot, but primarily it will be events. Because to me, and one of the big things for Asgard when I was there was we want people to buy from us. So what we would do is we would foster those communities, and we would build those events and things like that for players to come and participate in. And that was kind of how we built our customer loyalty, was through community and through events.
Sure, that's how Jay's done it.
So it's sort of hey, you come here 3 times a week to play Warmachine, and you play in all of our events and everything. Cool. We're supplying all this stuff for you. You mind paying 10% extra and buying it from us? etc. Is kind of how Asgard handled that situation. I have no idea what they're doing now. I haven't. I'll check it out in 2 weeks.
No. I'm not really asking what you guys did. Where do you see it going forward? In kind of a general, do you think it's going to go towards more of a European model where it's game clubs?
I don't think that hurts at all. I think. I guess what I'm trying to say is the stores need to do something besides be a simple retail front. Because if all you're doing is just putting stuff on shelves and expecting people to come buy it, I think you're going to get pushed out by the online guys, which is really sad. Like I love game stores. Obviously, I ran one for 8 years. I'm all about supporting local. I will always buy local if I can. But I think you need to give your customers and your regulars a reason to keep coming back and a reason to buy from you.
Yeah, I've been a community/event organizer for about 10 years now, so I try to make sure we always have events going on and give people a reason to come into the store. Like at this point, I think we have like basically 2 game nights at our store for Warmachine, and I try and do at least 1 monthly event. So far we have kind of like the monopoly on the Warmachine community in the city at least, and a lot of people like to come and buy from us. So I haven't noticed a lot of people shopping online ever since the map pricing or whatever they called it for Private Press came through, the minimum advertised pricing. Ever since that went through, we've seen a lot of people shopping in store. So,
well, perfect. I mean,
that was the point, I think.
Yeah.
The point of that was to help push people towards stores. Good. So it's good to hear that it's working.
What do you think is going to change about SteamRoller 17 and C.I.D? I mean, obviously, we're seeing a lot of changes back and forth, but do you feel like the core concept behind SteamRoller 2017 is pretty much going to remain intact? Or do you think we're going to see like changes to like scenarios and stuff that are going to be significantly different, like different as, say, the 2017 C.I.D was to SteamRoller 2016?
I don't think we're going to have very many large core concept changes for 2017. We did just redo Recon, and that went into the C.I.D process, I want to say this week. So in our last week here, we had a dev talk on it 2 weeks ago and then kind of put it into the official document this week. So I do think you might see some of the scenarios shift a little bit, but in general, all the core concepts are going to stay pretty firm. I know something that we just posted up today that some people may or may not have caught because it was in a battle report posted by one of our staff, VPS Jeff, great guy, works at Mox Boarding House, fantastic dude. He posted that he was testing the 5 CP win limit versus the 6 CP win limit because a lot of the feedback that we've received has been how difficult it is to win via scenario. And while we do want to make it harder than it was in 2016 to win via scenario, we certainly do not want it to be impossible. So we're currently in-house testing a 5 CP variant versus a 6.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
So I think that is probably the largest change that you're going to see happen at the moment.
That would be pretty big.
It's something like that.
Has anyone considered changing the turn limit from like 7 to either a higher number or like 8, 9, or maybe 10? Not that I think that needs to happen. I was just curious if that was thrown around a bit at all. Or did you guys settle on 7 before it went to C.I.D for sure?
We definitely tested a lot of different options here. Most Warmachine games that go beyond 7 turns, something has gone horribly wrong. Horribly wrong. So we wouldn't really want to increase it past 7. And when I say horribly wrong, I mean like the Storm Division mirror match where both players took double Storm Striders.
The good old double warder mirror match.
Like if you remember from Mark 2, if you ever saw the Vorka 1 family reunion mirror match, you know exactly what I'm thinking about.
Axis theme mirror was also quite fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is just a tragedy of a game of Warmachine, and nobody wants this. That's one of the reasons why the turn limit is there, is to stop matches like that from just grinding into infinity. It's also there because it functions well with the new CP scoring system. But we did try a bunch of different things for the end of game stuff. If you guys were particularly paying attention before C.I.D started, we had discussed the random game length that started on turn 5. People did end up liking it, and that was fine. We took a lot of feedback from different conventions that we were at where we tried that stuff. And we essentially came to the conclusion that really we don't necessarily want the game to end on 5, but we don't want it to go forever. So how can we do this? And we ended up deciding on 7. If someone in C.I.D had given us a compelling reason to change it from 7, I think it certainly could have changed. There aren't too many complaints about 7 at the moment.
No,
and most feel like games end before that, and we find that most games end before that based on the battle report sections.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I do too.
I am personally very happy it's not random.
Yeah, we were paying attention to that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's just a kind of off the wall question. If it was random starting at turn 7, would you have had a problem with it?
Not nearly as much.
Less of a problem because it feels like like you said, it feels like at turn 7 the game's usually reached its natural conclusion anyway.
Or it's like 3 dudes in a caster staring at 3 dudes in a caster, right?
It's like, if I leave my zone to try and kill you and fail, I lose. So why would I do that? And you just sit there and like take random like razor wind assassination attempts at each other until the game ends.
Or it just becomes a miserable death clock slapfest.
Right.
Which we also really do not want to see happen ever again.
I had gotten into a situation kind of like that in the Invitational last year, and I'll be very happy to see like the random like I'm gonna try and take a 3-second turn so that I have a 1-second turn following this, and I was like, this is not Warmachine. This is literally just a cluster of dumb actions.
Exactly. So if we can remove that kind of stuff, I think that's perfect. And if that's the only thing the game link did, I would be happy with it. But it also solves all of these other issues.
Yeah. I will admit I was pretty against the turn limit, and then after playing like 5 to 10 games, I was not as against it, even close to where I was, and probably almost for it at this point. So, and I'm certainly willing to accept it. I actually think it's probably a good change.
I mean, for probably 80 or 90% of Warmachine games, it's completely irrelevant. They will end well before the 7 turns are up, or the 7 rounds are up. I always get those two mixed up, and it gets me into a lot of trouble on the forums.
Pagani quoted, ends on top of 3. Like
7 turns is it.
Yep.
The only real concern that's been discussed is that it feels like at sometimes C.I.D. moves too quickly, or that there's too many C.I.D. things on the table. And of course, there's no real frame of reference because this is the second real round of C.I.D. But the concern from some of the people have been like, do you have enough feedback in these relatively narrow, like 1-week time frames to be able to just, feel like you've got like a really comfortable grip on this and you're prepared to move forward with it? Like we look at like C.I.D. right now and you look at what's tested, you've got every battle engine, Steamroller 2017, and then you have the Bane theme force as well. And then now a Troll theme force. So what kind of volume do you guys get for like all these playtest matches and the forms that are submitted, and how do you delineate that information and make sure that you're comfortable when you move forward?
Well, we get a ton of information through our feedback form, which the public doesn't really get to see because it's just a form that you fill out and then it goes into a database, which we then pull the information from. So there's a huge amount of feedback that's done through that, and what that lets us do is essentially use database algorithms to pull information out of it. So we get a lot of that, which nobody else sees. And then, honestly, my job is reading those forums at this point. I play test about, I don't know, probably about 20, 25 hours a week, and then the rest of it is reading the C.I.D. forums. So I sit there and I go through all the battle reports, all the threads, all that kind of stuff, and compile information. I take notes, and then once a week we will sit down and discuss these things with the whole development team, and then we will put out our update for that week. So I do think that we got enough time. Yeah, it's usually great, and if we do have something that we're worried about, we'll usually play a game or two with it before we put out the update for that week.
Okay. If you could change one thing that most players do in their battle reports writing, what would you do? What would you change?
To make it easier for you to absorb.
To make it easier for you guys to absorb what we're saying.
So the use of hyperbole is really bad, and I do it. Like, we all do it. We're all like, man, this thing's trash, or man, this thing is the best. Like, saying things like that in the battle reports is worthless, right? Like, it doesn't actually mean anything. So I would say try and get away from stuff like that when you're reporting C.I.D. games, because like we got a report from, I want to say it was on the Fulcrum, and the guy was like, this thing is unplayable trash, and this was in our feedback form.
The new Fulcrum?
The new Fulcrum, yeah.
You deleted his battle report.
Stick with me here. So the feedback form also links to a battle report. So we're like, okay, well, why does this guy think this thing is so bad? Fine, whatever. So they had played a Fulcrum mirror match.
Oh my god.
where each player had 2 fulcrums. Right? which, I mean, fine. You both want to play the new stuff. Great, that's cool. But this is probably the best example of, one, why you should never do that. And two, like, if that guy's feedback was, we played a fulcrum mirror match and they couldn't hurt each other because they're all immune to all elements, I could have been like, oh, okay, that's fair. Like, fine. But I had to go, like, look up his battle report and find all of his stuff. And so it took probably about 15 minutes out of my day to go and dig through all the stuff to find him and make sure all that stuff's in there. Mm-hmm. And that's not helpful to anyone. So if instead of saying, like, this thing sucks, I don't want to play it, be like, look, this thing didn't really perform very well. This is what was wrong with it. This is what I would like to see it do. Is going to be way better than this is unplayable.
Right.
Or this is too, like,
I played my Nemo 3 gunline in Storm Division into Nemo 3 gunline in Storm Division, and it wasn't a good game. You're like, well, we knew that. Thanks.
Yeah, like sure, but then not even. But don't say that. Just be like, I took a Firefly and it was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, well, why was it terrible? Oh, because I played it into Storm Division and it couldn't shoot anything, and the rest of my electric guns didn't do anything. Now we know why it was terrible.
Yeah.
So including that information in your feedback is very important because it saves us a lot of time. And honestly, it makes your feedback far more valuable because it shows what thought you've put into it. And some of the things that do get changed are, one, because they're too confusing, or two, because players aren't using it right. So if you're just saying this is terrible and I don't want to play with it, that doesn't help us identify the problem. And so helping identify the problem is the short answer. And the 5 minutes before this can just be left alone.
The double circle battle engine stories, that's pretty good.
That's pretty amazing.
There's been some great stuff.
Do you guys commonly find in the C.I.D. players not playing rules the way you thought they were written?
Yes. Yeah, because remember, none of this stuff has gone through editing. So sometimes the wording is not the clearest. Mm-hmm. So we will definitely have people, like, there was some problems with the reinforcement rule on the Dwarf Battle Engine. I'm blanking on its name at the moment. The Siege Crawler, where people thought it returned D3 models to every unit. In its command.
That's really good.
One unit. So that was really good, like really good. But that was not our intent, so we clarified that in the second week.
Okay.
So yes, we definitely do get stuff like that sometimes, where people will, one, they will play it in a way that is unique and interesting and cool and different, which I think might have been what your question was. And then two, we will not have the clearest rules, and they will be misinterpreted by players as well.
I just want to get a hold of the Siege Crawler that dumps dudes back into every unit.
Yeah, can you have a week of playtesting that on the Wraith engine of the Throne of Everblight? I think it'd be balanced. I think it'd be pretty good.
Yeah, Swordsman, they're undying.
Yeah.
While we're at it, I'm just going to ask for whelp shedding on the battle engine and call it good.
Doesn't even make sense. Only if you play it versus other war wagons.
There was a league in Mark II where there was a spell martyr that came back infinitely. If you killed it, it basically spawned on your board edge. So the first thing I did was play the Thagrosh 1 theme forces. You could take two spawning vessels in. Or I think it was 3 spawning vessels. And you just have like a little shredder factory back there going.
You start off, I kill these 5 spell martyrs. They turn into 5 spell martyrs. I kill those 5 spell martyrs. I see a problem with this.
Yeah, we absolutely find interactions like that through C.I.D. and get them addressed. And I think that's one of the best benefits of it, is that it helps us find these broken interactions that are not functioning the way we want them to function.
You know, speaking of the Mark II leagues, everyone kind of, I know that you weren't at the company back then, but everyone kind of thought that might have been a stealth playtesting forum for them, because they would release kind of these crazy rules for certain models or different cards. Can you comment on if it was, and if C.I.D. might replace it?
I don't believe that it was.
Okay, it was just like some crazy rules that see what happens?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, there you go.
As we close up on C.I.D., so what are you most excited for to come up next in C.I.D., if you can talk about it, of course? And has C.I.D. been as much fun for you guys at PP as it has been for the community using it?
I mean, I hope to answer the second question first. I hope it's been as much fun for the community as it has been for us, because I love talking to people about Warmachine. I love chatting about it. I love hearing the ideas and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really enjoying it. So I hope they're enjoying it as well, because I don't know, I love it. My job is to sit around and read forums all day and talk to people. So that's like the best job ever.
Oh, but then you also have to play Warmachine.
Oh yeah, fine. My mistake. I then also have to play Warmachine all day.
Yeah.
So it's a terrible life.
Tough life, man.
A terrible, terrible life. My favorite thing coming up in C.I.D. is actually Northkin. I think we have a lot of really cool stuff planned for them. A lot of new.
So excited.
So I think the troll players will be happy with a lot of the stuff coming out of that. And their C.I.D. cycle, I think, is going to be exciting. So I'm looking forward.
You say that and you made my heart jump like 6 beats right there. I'm just like, my chest is pounding out right now.
Would you say that the current space we're in right now in C.I.D. is what we should expect in the future, like continually, where we have 3 major things on playtest at once, basically? With we've got like an adjustment to Crix and a bunch of theme forces. We've also got the 2017 Steamroller and Battle Engines all at the same time. Would you say that's like a very high level of what we should see to be simultaneously on the C.I.D., or is this like a normal point?
I think this is a very high level at the moment. I think it will be rare that there's more than one thing in C.I.D. at a time. So one set of rules in C.I.D. at a time. It certainly doesn't mean there will never be 2. I feel like we will probably never do 3 again. I mean, never, right? We will hope to never do 3 again.
It's been very difficult to get to everything simultaneously as a player perspective, I think. But
that is a lot of feedback that we have received, is that there's just too much for you to test at a time. I do think this kind of like pulls back the veil a little bit to what us as developers do every day. I mean, we have 16 projects or something. I don't know the actual number, but we have over 10 projects going at the same time all the time for development. So there's just constantly things happening and changing and all that kind of stuff. And Hungerford talks about developer brain, where like he has 10 versions of the rules in his head. Mm-hmm. He's not kidding. Like, it is insane, the amount of stuff that we work on every day and have to just shift gears on constantly. So we don't want to do this to the community, and we have heard the feedback from a lot of players that this is overwhelming, and we have listened to that and will do our best to not do this again.
Do you expect to always have something on C.I.D., or will there be breaks in between projects?
There will be breaks between projects.
Okay. I felt like at the very beginning it was nice and smooth with Grimkin, because it was there and like we were kind of doing it in the off time, so you still get your normal like actual practice games in, or your league night games or whatever. But it, like, for example, and I know we kind of are all in the same spot on this, I think, but if like you're running some kind of league and then simultaneously there's like 3 things on C.I.D. that you also want to try, and yeah, I definitely think it was a little harsh after we went from Grimkin to this.
Yeah, there's like 2 Warmachine weekend qualifiers in the next 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah, and like I know me and Karl and a few other people are like trying to find new lists to play, and everyone's wanting to play, different games, which is fine, but it just scatters the community a little bit. But it sounds like they've heard our thoughts. So
yes, yeah, that's something that we were definitely aware of. And I think it's one of those things that like we didn't really foresee coming, right? Because we're the first company that's ever really done this. We're blazing this trail, so we're learning a ton as we go. And as I kind of said at the beginning of the cast, we've only been doing this for 7 weeks, so this is still very, very young in its infancy, and will be growing and evolving over the next years.
It feels a little League of Legends-y with pretty. I guess League's like 6 months, but. Some of the other like MMOs.
I like to see it as sort of like a public test realm kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So the last question I have for you today, Will, is kind of like the generic wrap-up question, right? So if there's one piece of wisdom you could give, and we kind of already touched on this when we talked about submitting feedback, but if there's one piece of wisdom you could give to any of the players, all the players participating in the C.I.D. process, what would it be? Why?
Post on the forums, not on Facebook.
Okay, that's a really good point, because like we've seen a lot of comments, like a lot of like really great feedback, where someone's like, "Hey, we should try this. We should try this," and it's like, "Well, are you a part of C.I.D? Have you brought this up? Like, it's a really cool idea. You should probably let them hear it." I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much hit it on the head there, right? Like, I'm on Facebook trolling all the different groups all the time because that's what I do. Like, I wake up at night, I'm going to the bathroom, I'm gonna get on Facebook and check out the Troll Blood forums or whatever, right? Like,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
not the forum, the Facebook groups.
Yeah, Facebook.
My bad.
A lot of people have moved into that, saying that when they mean the Facebook. You're like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? I was like, oh, Facebook. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't say forum then.
So I'm going to jump into all the different Facebook groups and stuff, and I'm going to start reading that stuff, and that's what I do. So if I see your feedback, great, but the other developers are not doing that, and
Right.
I can only take so much from Facebook and bring it to those people. So if you want to really have your voice heard, and you really want to either air your grievances, air your praise, post ideas for what you think would be cool, that really needs to go on the C.I.D. forums, not on social media. It's very, very important. And it's also very important to not just email it to me or to Hungerford or to someone else, because if you put it on the forums, one, all of the developers will see it, and two, the community can help you work through any problems in there, and they can help build ideas, because it's been amazing the teamwork inside of the community where we haven't had to really do anything, and they have kind of worked through a problem, and then we're like, cool, thanks guys, and then we can implement it into the game. So I think it's just very important to make sure that you're using the C.I.D. forums and not other stuff.
Personally, for me, I've never been really a forum person until basically C.I.D. I occasionally would go to a forum, but it was like I would go to the old Privateer press gang forums because like I was notifying someone about something or getting info for signing up for like running shifts or something. Going into this, it's just so much easier to go to my phone and post something on my Facebook or in a group on Facebook about something. And so I'm trying to get used to going to the forum, but I don't know, just lack of muscle memory, basically.
Sure. And I mean, it's a new thing for a lot of people.
Scott, so I guess that's our last official question, right?
That is the last official question.
Does anybody have any questions for Will? Or
No, I think it's good talk.
that was good talk too.
Yeah, I thought it was a very positive. I thought it was a very good interview. Is there anything you'd like to say, or any thoughts or ideas you want to express now that you have an open mic and a captive audience, Will?
I mean, cheers to everyone participating in C.I.D. Like, without them, we couldn't be doing this, and I think the game is going to become much, much better because of it. And I have a lot of faith in the community, and I have a lot of faith in my coworkers that we're going to be able to overcome all sorts of problems and all sorts of unforeseen consequences that come out of model rules and stuff that will no longer make it into the game because of this.
Well, thank you for coming on, Will.
Yep.
And thank you guys very much for having me. It's been a blast, and I would love to come back sometime.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely.
We'd love to have you.
All right. Well, thank you again, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for coming on. It's good talk, like I said. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. And don't be strangers at cons. Come say hi.
We will. Are you going to be at MomCon?
No, I don't think we're going to that one as Privateer Press.
Mm-hmm. What's the next con you guys are going to?
Next one for, I don't know the next one for Privateer. I want to say the next one for me, probably Gen Con. Maybe Origins.
Gen Con. That's
I'm on that.
okay. Well, so Lock and Load then is before that, right?
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be a lock load.
I hope you could trouble yourself to drive like halfway across town.
How do you like Seattle so far?
It's been really great. Everyone tells me it rains every day.
The summers are really nice.
It's mostly true. But yeah, the summer's been great. It's been like 60 and sunny for the past like 3 weeks, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I spent
No complaints.
6 months there on an internship once. It's a great city. I love it.
Well, alrighty, gentlemen. We're going to call it a wrap. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, Will.
Bye.
Good night, Will, and thank you for coming on again.
And now the trash talk starts.
That was pretty good. I feel a lot better now about C.I.D. than I did like yesterday.
Yeah. I'm glad that they... I suspected this was the case, but I'm glad he said that this week's like measurement thing specifically was written harsh
Intentionally.
Intentionally?
Test to, like
because we were all like
what problems does it cause if we just say basically you can't do anything? And it's like, oh,
you can't play the game anymore.
So people are a little upset about that. But, yeah,
so they're
and
stress testing it. That's fine.
And right now, the pre-measure argument is basically, oh, I didn't know salt could catch on fire. Like that's pretty much the discussion.
It can, and it's very pretty.
It's
I know.
yeah. You would get to watch nerds hit each other in the face. But so I thought it was pretty good. I'm glad we got to talk to him about it.
Yeah, me too.
I think we just call it a podcast here. I think that's a really, really good single shot podcast.
I gotta get going though.
All right.
So goodbye.
Bye, Carl.
Take it easy, Carl.
Bye everybody.
Goodbye. Goodbye now. Also, come get your goddamn tournament rack.
Yeah, I need to get that.
Threw that thing
back.
into the street and ran it over earlier.
Oh,
I mean,
did
it's
you?
fine because it's tough as shit, but
That and you ran it over with your moped, right?
no, it was a car. But I mean, PVC is pretty tough when it's not hollow.
Fair.
All right.
All right.
Stop and record.
Okay.
I have a little bit of Troll Dojo if you guys want to walk through it. All right. The dojo is, let me jump over and grab it real quick.
Is it with the new United Grills Team Force?
Krill Company.
Yeah, the new militia theme force. Yeah.
Wait, there's another one? Or
No,
is it
it's
Krill-
the Krill Company. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it's super weird that there is a Krill Company theme force that you cannot use Krill warriors in.
That bothers me so
That
much.
bothers me on a core level that shakes my very being.
I understand.
It's,
Excuse me.
should have brought it up earlier, I guess.
No,
but-
that's true. We had him on.
yeah, we
should've
did.
said
We had it
that.
right there.
Even if they don't make sense thematically, it's called fucking Creel Company. The first thing I thought when you said Creel Company was Crystal One theme is back. It's immediately where my brain went.
Yeah.
All right, continue, Scott.
That'll be my first. I should post a battle report or some feedback on it as a kid, like I'm supposed to. Go ahead,
So
Scott. Sorry.
oh no, you're fine. So the benefits of the theme force are essentially +1 to a starting roll, and for every 20 points in dudes or battle engines that you pick up, you can get a free solo or a free artillery crew. So that got my brain to thinking. I think this is a great chance to let Grim 2 shine a little bit. So I came up with Grim 2, 2 bombers, a war wagon, max sluggers, min sluggers, max bushwhackers and command detachment, min stone and command detachment, 2 thumper crews which are free, and Braylon Wonderheart which is free. And so the concept behind the list is I'm essentially going to use the new war wagon design I'm going to play a range dominant game with my opponent, and then I'm going to, on the feet turn, send in that war wagon, so that way I have a 5-inch bubble off of a huge base to start triggering his feet with, which I think could be kind of interesting because it gives you a lot of space. And then you also have bushwhackers with slip away that allows them to get into a bunch of really interesting little positions, so you can kind of turn on your feet as well. And then the idea, of course, being just blast your opponent to bits. Now, the reason why I like this list is because if this theme and the war wagon stay roughly the same, I think this list actually is going to pair really well with Doomshaper 3, kind of replacing Madrak in that vein. And that's all, of course, predicated on the fact that we're going to see a rise in infantry machine. I know in the latest chain attack, they were talking about how they felt like swarms of dudes would be a very, very strong way to play the game going forward.
Yeah, it's just a natural progression of Warmachine.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of my way of trying to get ahead of a meta a little bit and presenting an answer while still keeping the flexibility of Doomshaper 3.
My first comment would be that it's a lot of guns that you can't boost damage on. So I definitely see it being more aimed at killing a swarm of infantry rather than really anything with a substantial number of armor and boxes.
It doesn't prohibit you from taking beasts. It just benefits you for not.
No, but I'm talking about his list.
Oh, sorry.
He's got
I just meant
he's
the
got 2 bombers. It doesn't have a mauler, which is fine. You don't need a mauler. You've got. Does he have mortality still?
He has mortality. So between mortality and stone, your bombers can realistically hit a power strength 18. That should be enough to get rid of a heavy.
It's a lower fury threshold than the Mauler. I don't know.
I mean, a lot of armies live with Arm 18 or POW 18 heavies.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not even talking about the bombers. Like the rest of the list, like the bushwhackers will never scratch a Juggernaut's armor. I mean, they can
CRA at least.
They could drop a CRA on it once a
not
turn
fast
and do
enough.
7 damage, but that's not going to be enough.
Mhm.
It's definitely an anti-dudes list.
Absolutely.
Or maybe
that's what it's getting.
maybe an anti combined arms kind of style. You could probably handle 2 to 3 heavies with that list pretty easily. 4 would be pushing it, and anything over that seems like a bad matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Does he have any stealth outs or anything like that too?
Grim 2 has Mage Sight.
So your bombers have stealth out.
Well, the dudes are short enough range where it doesn't really matter, right?
Bushwhackers aren't.
Other than the bushwhackers.
Sluggers really aren't either. Range 10?
Range 10, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that I think dude swarms, any dude swarm that survives the meta is going to have anti-shooting tech built in, either through stealth or mass concealment or some kind of Witch Coven type feat or Rask type feat. Because it's just so obvious that your list is like preys on them. They're going to take any kind of defensive tech they can. Like the new Bane theme force, where all Banes get Prowl.
What about trying to find a way to fit a Glacier King in that list? Because that gives you a heavy hitter for late game, and he's pretty good on feat turn as well because he has the rate of fire 3 gun. He likes mortality. He likes Mage Sight. Like Grim does a lot of stuff for him. Like he fixes his rat and fixes his stats and does a lot of stuff.
Doesn't the Sea King have a pretty good gun?
His Animus is
really.
an attack. I don't think his gun. Does he have a drag gun? I haven't really looked at him that much.
The Sea King?
Yeah.
He has a semi-drag Animus. Like he has an Animus that sucks everything into it.
His Animus is like Hellmouth or whatever, right?
Yeah, essentially.
The Sea King.
jump over
It
to
is range 8, AoE 3, POW 13, corrosive continuous.
Oh.
I mean, he's a good beast. I just don't think he's a ranged beast.
He's not a great range beast. He's super expensive, and I don't think he's that much better than a Glacier King.
Yeah,
on that
I thought
list.
he had a better gun than.
Yeah, I'm
the
a
other
big fan
two.
of the Glacier King because it's is it reload 2 now? It's
Yeah.
range 12, POW 14. Reload.
It basically
2,
didn't
yeah.
change from Mark II.
Thunderbolt still, which is pretty cool because it can keep the heavies off of your bombers for a while. I don't know, I think-
you want to keep the bombers and add the Glacier King?
Yeah.
Then I don't think it's an anti-dude swarm list anymore.
We got 2 bombers and Grim.
I mean, if they don't have any anti-blast tech, which a lot of dude swarm lists will.
Maybe, yeah.
And trenches are a lot
Maybe
more
drop
common.
one of the bombers.
Trenches, yeah. Maybe
Thank
one
you,
of the.
Muse.
I think you could pop. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
What?
The Muse sets made trenchers a lot more common on tables than they used to be. I used to never play with trenches before the flat terrain pieces came out.
Just shoot the dude in the trench.
You can if you hit him.
I mean, my behemoth doesn't have any trouble.
That's what we should have fucking talked. I missed. Damn it! That stupid behemoth on those Forge Seers. That's what I should have talked about. Holy shit, that thing is too good.
Working as intended.
Nope.
That thing is broke as fuck!
You one-shot a Nerif on Fiona's feet turn, right? Is that happened, right?
I had to hit it twice.
Yeah.
That's
And
not one-shotting, that's one-rounding.
Sure. Sure. With
I
your-
mean, I almost had to aim. Let's be honest. I almost had to aim.
Almost.
Seems fine.
So anyway, I guess that's my feedback.
Glad
for
we
you, Scott.
avoided that topic.
If it's a good next time, if it's aimed at anti-dude swarm, I think it does its job well. But I could see it getting into like a 4 heavy matchup and struggling. A lot of dude swarm lists might just have 4 heavy. Like that's 40 points for Khador. That's not too much more than their Warjack points. That's like 1 extra Marauder.
Can we go through the list just real fast again? Just read off real fast.
Sure. It's a Grim 2, 2 bombers, a war wagon, max sluggers, min sluggers, max bushwhackers, and command detachment, min stone and command detachment, thumper crew and Braylon. Thumper crew times 2 and Braylon. So to deal with the armor, there's a lot of unboostable guns in here.
Just to be clear, the bushwhackers are intended to be the mark target guys, right?
Yeah. Between them and the War Wagon, the hope is that I should have no trouble being able to turn on mark target.
Is it their UA that has like the little mini mortar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. Is there a reason that you're not taking burrowers for the mark target guys? I understand there's a lot of negative thoughts on burrowers right now, but they're like literally so perfect at triggering mark target.
I think they're actually in certain lists. I think they're pretty good. And Grim 2 might be one of them.
People underestimate the ability of an immune unit. Like the unit that literally cannot be touched until a certain point in the game in which you
Even
decide.
if they just dig in, like even digging is usually enough to. And snipe on the feet turn helps them so much.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm not really looking at burrowers right now is because I felt like I was going to need something that could contribute earlier to the game as well. So because a lot of times burrowers in the games I played with them, they're not really midfield until turn 3, and so granted you have a 5-inch range to turn on mark target, but it feels like with them not being midfield until turn 3, it feels like I am going to run into situations where I really need them to be somewhere and they just can't make it there because of the burrow ability. And then if I'm not burrowing them, then I think I'm probably just better off with bushwhackers for the intended purpose.
I don't know. They still seem pretty. I mean, they're a little pricey, but yeah. I think 2 units of sluggers is probably excessive. I cannot imagine a situation in which bushwhackers, sluggers, battle engine, double bomber is not enough attacks against an infantry-based list. I think the second unit of sluggers is a little excessive. Braylon is...
Yeah, you got Braylon, so why not Highwayman?
Solid already. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you need Highwayman. I like sluggers. Highwaymen are also good, especially with mortality on the table, and snipe. I almost am kind of like you should drop the bushwhackers. I like the bushwhackers. I just don't know if they're exactly what the list is looking for. But at that point, you need something else to trigger your mark targets then. Mark target, he gives mark target to every friendly faction model in his control, right?
Yeah.
What about not Misspeaker, but Shaman? Shamans do that weird teleport thing, right? Or am I thinking the Misspeaker?
Are the shamans in the theme force?
That's a good point.
The shamans are not.
What about fire eaters?
Fire eaters are in the theme force.
They have a range deck.
Yeah, and so I mean, what about them for your mark target activators?
That'd be pretty good. Yeah, assault on them is pretty synergistic. I mean, they don't get snipe, but mark target's really good.
Yeah, it helps them out quite a bit because they're spray 6, so they're going to be within 5 of almost everything they shoot anyway.
He has straight up snipe.
His feet
does.
snipe and mark
Oh,
target to
okay.
all models in his control. Friendly faction models in his control. Yeah, what about dropping the min sluggers for fire eaters? And then I don't know how many points min sluggers are.
6. Sluggers are 6.
You're point short.
But the War Wagon did go down to 16 today.
Okay.
So there's
assuming that
the other
stays, yeah. I'm not a big fan of the War Wagon in this list, except for as a mark target kind of concept, but it's probably fine because it slows an army down. It like kind of takes the pressure off of your gun line for a turn or two. Yeah, so maybe drop 1 unit of sluggers, and I think you kind of have to decide between bushwhackers and sluggers at that point. You have a lot of anti-infantry in that list already. Not to mention just what's his face? Grimm's personal work. It helps you pick out problematic models as well.
Okay.
So between Braylon, Grimm, the battle engine, so I'm assuming the bombers are 100% dedicated to battle group work every turn. So unless they're giving you free AoEs on infantry, which I doubt. So they're definitely targeting heavies unless you're playing like Mina. So you have battle engine, full sluggers, full bushwhackers, and a unit of fire eaters. They're all focusing on infantry. Seems like a lot.
The fire eaters with boosted damage
They can do both.
can actually focus on heavies.
But I assume if you're sending them in for feed turn, you're more worried about triggering mark target in good spots, which isn't necessarily mutually exclusive.
You can mortality a heavy and then send them in on that heavy while also activating mark target on infantry.
I agree.
I think it's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's kind of.
If you drop
It's kind of the same.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's kind of the same theory that I have behind the full sluggers, and I don't know if the min sluggers. I don't know if 2 sluggers is useful. I agree. I'm on the fence on that. But it's kind of the same thought process I had, that like sluggers under mortality are power strength 15 guns. Like that's a lot of POW 15 shots to be thrown around. So I'm hoping like the battle group and the war wagon are going to be able to do a reasonable amount of work to the other battle group. And then if I need to, I should be able to cough up enough chip-in damage with the benefit of mortality to be able to get it to work. Now, of course, there's a lot of ifs in that statement. If Grim lands the mortality, if he doesn't die the turn after he lands it, because range is an issue, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. But that was definitely the thought process.
Why is Grim mortality stuff? Why isn't your Rune Bear? Is he not allowed?
You can't take a Rune Bear. And...
Damn it! This list is awful.
Can you take Troll Sorcerers?
I just asked that.
I think no.
Northkin
Sorcerer's
Shaman.
different than the Rune Bear. No, you cannot take Northkin Shaman in this list.
No, Troll Sorcerers.
Oh, the Sorcerer?
Yeah.
I think
He's a unit
you
attachment,
can.
so yeah.
He's a unit attachment.
He's a unit attachment, so I'm pretty sure you can. He's actually a
can.
weapon attachment.
I would definitely put one of those on your Scattergunners for Ghost Fleet, just so you have an answer to Blackbanes. Because right
good
now
call.
you do not at all.
Curlstone.
Min Grillstone? That's not good.
Ghost Chaser can run pretty deep into the line.
Yeah, but you're usually sacrificing your stone to do it.
But you just let it die that turn and you don't get the armor.
Right.
You leave everyone else back.
I mean,
and it just
against
runs.
this, I don't.
I would like to see a sorcerer on. He also has a couple. I mean, he's got Razorwind, so that helps. But Rituals of Power could help a lot.
With Braylon already in the list, I'm kind of of the mind that it should be Highwaymen over Bushwhackers. I understand they fulfill different roles, but Highwaymen have a higher chance of contributing against heavies on their mortality than the Bushwhackers do. Because both having CRA and one having 10 to 20 shots instead of like whatever the Bushwhackers have, which is 11. Because you can do like four 5-man CRAs, which is pretty nice under mortality, which makes them effectively like POW 17. So 4 POW 17 instead of like 1 POW 23.
Yep.
And they're not stealth, but
They're not stealth; they have prowl, I think.
prowl.
I think they do. Yeah.
They don't have prowl.
They used to.
We lied.
No, they never have prowl.
I must just be thinking Braylon.
I really thought they did because they.
Gunfighter,
Uh-huh.
CRA, Pathfinder, tough. They have Pathfinder at least.
I thought they used to have Prowl because like that was a big thing. It was like huddling them around Glacier Kings to activate Prowl.
That was scouts, I believe.
No.
I'm pretty sure they did because I remember them being in the woods a lot.
I remember. I thought they did. Maybe they didn't. I don't know.
Maybe it was just for the defense bonus.
I gotta get going though.
All right.
Cool.
You guys
All right.
are going to make me dig out the Mark II cards here.
You can do what you want.
No,
Check it out, Braylon.
even if they did it, they did.
Braylon has prowl. Called it.
Braylon does. Braylon absolutely does.
Called it.
Yeah. Maybe.
Bye now.
So I will. I'll build up amalgamation of that. I'll swap out bushwhackers and stuff, and
And maybe I'm wrong.
if I head up to Kansas City tomorrow, then I'll bring it up with me. I'd like to test a couple games with it.
Yeah, I mean, try it out with both and see which one you like the best.
Do I need to get my Trollkin War Wagon out?
No, I'll get it put together. I've got mine sitting in front of me.